Welcome back to One Healthy World. I'm the weight loss champion, Chuck Carroll.
And I'm Dr. Gemma Newman, also known as the Plant Power Doctor.
This is episode 2 of our 3-part weight loss series. And in the first episode, Dr. Newman, we were talking a lot about the best foods for weight loss. And we found out that the blueberry, according to our friend Dr. Neal Barnard, is the #1 food for weight loss. That was in his book, The Power Foods Diet. But today, we're actually going to look at the other side of the coin.
We are indeed the dark side.
Ooh.
We're going to be looking at the foods that we want to minimize or avoid if we're hoping to lose weight.
Oh, the doctor with the anti-prescription. And you know what? One of the foods that is just loaded with fat and calories can really stifle weight loss is oil. But it's so hard to cook without it.
People don't know how to cook without it often, and I think it's a really easy win when we're trying to lose weight is to cook without it. So we're going to find out from our culinary correspondent, Anne Christine. She's going to show us how.
I like the sound of that, but we're going to begin with a little bit of science. I love me some science, and actually why members of a certain group are showing us why eating natural foods, healthier foods, that is the slimmer and healthier future. And Dr. Neal Barnard has an exquisite report for us.
Researchers who study the effects of food on health have taken a particularly close look at a religious group, Seventh-day Adventists. You can see why. They're health conscious, they avoid tobacco and alcohol, but their food choices will vary. In 2009, researchers reported how various eating habits within this population were associated with differences in body weight. And the body mass index is one way of reporting body weight. It's adjusted for how tall you are. And a healthy BMI is between 18.5 and 25. Now, the average BMI of omnivores in the Adventist group was 28.8, which is in the overweight range. Semi-vegetarians, that is people who eat meat less than once per week, they were a little slimmer at 27.3. And people who eat no meat except for fish, 26.3. For ovo-lacto vegetarians, a little slimmer still, but for the vegans, 23.6. They were the only group whose average BMI was actually within that healthy range. So a plant-based diet, it's high in fiber, it's modest in calories, and it promotes a healthy metabolism. So in other words, people who eat these kinds of foods burn calories faster. And the researchers also found that the prevalence of diabetes was similar to the weight prevalence. In other words, highest for the meat eaters, lowest for the people following a totally healthy plant-based diet.
That was fascinating. And I'm listening to Dr. Barnard there, and I'm thinking about a lot of these foods that the Seventh-day Adventists were eating. And they're the same foods that I kind of naturally gravitated toward while I was losing weight and certainly eat a lot of today to keep the weight off.
Yeah, it's super fascinating because these people are generally quite healthy and they're making healthy choices. But you can see even those who are making what we think of traditionally as healthy choices were in the overweight and obese categories.
And you know what else it made me think of was that chart that we see a lot where it shows what 500 calories of a certain type of food looks like in the stomach. And it starts with just a little itty bitty coat of oil. And then you see like whole legumes, beans, and then fruits and vegetables and how it's like Thanksgiving in the belly. And I would imagine that if you're a doctor and you're showing that to your patient, that can be massively effective in like helping them make the connection between, yeah, what you eat actually does matter and calorie density.
Absolutely. I love that chart because it's so visual and it shows people, 500 calories of oil looks a tiny amount, 500 calories of meat in the stomach fills you up just a little bit more. Whereas if you've got all the whole grains and the beans and especially the fruits and veg, they fill you right up, and it's amazing to be able to give them that visual.
And you know what also really stood out to me in Dr. Barnard's report was how even the group who were just eating a moderate amount of meat and fish, even just one time a week, they still had an above average or above normal range BMI.
Yeah, it's super interesting. And only the vegan group had a normal BMI range, which really fascinated me. And I think it's really especially interesting because in modern culture, we talk a lot about low-carb diets or keto diets to help with weight loss. But we also need to think about that long-term health piece. With this study Dr. Barnard shared, it wasn't just about our BMI, it was about diabetes risk as well. And so when we have a lower carbohydrate diet, we're at higher risk of diabetes and heart disease, which people don't often think about.
No. So let's break this down a little bit. Can you compare fat and carbohydrates for us? Because when people talk about weight, they just vilify carbs. And I'm not sure that that's actually right.
No, you're right, Chuck. It's not right. So let's break it down. I think when we think about carbohydrates, we have to understand how many calories they are per gram. So in carbohydrates, you've got about 4 kilocalories per gram versus fats where you've got 9 kilocalories per gram. And so when you're consuming these things, you can see how much easier it is to get the higher energy levels from the fat without necessarily feeling so full. And I like to think of it as well in terms of energy and where we put it. So with carbohydrates, that is the preferred energy source for our bodies. Our bodies love carbohydrates. They use it for fuel. And so as a result, we can think of that as a bit like a short-term investment. You take it in and your body uses it straight away. It's nice and easy. Whereas with fats, your body immediately tries to store those in your longer-term investments. And it means it's much harder for you to burn that off.
Is that just because we're just genetically predisposed to storing fat? Is that just the way that we've kind of evolved as human beings to hang on to that because you never know where the next meal is coming?
Yeah, well, exactly. I mean, in times gone by, it was harder to get hold of fat and we had much less of it. Whereas nowadays, it's still the case that we have an awful lot of saturated fat, but that's primarily from meat, from cheese, and of course from junk foods. We've got much more of it in our diet now, and our bodies just store that straight away. Whereas with carbohydrates, we tend to use that for fuel in glycogen reserves.
Let me ask you, I think a lot of people always ask this when I'm on the exam room and this topic comes up as well. Okay, but what's the difference between the fat that's found in plant foods versus the fat that you would get in that fish or that steak?
So breaking that down, the fats that you find in plants are generally unsaturated fats. So monounsaturated and polyunsaturated fats, which are healthy fats for our bodies. Thinking nuts, seeds, avocados, things like this. These are really good for us. We don't want to consume all of those in excess if we're trying to lose weight, but we definitely need them for a healthy body. Whereas saturated fats are known to be a driver for things like heart disease and obviously being overweight and obese, and they are primarily found in animal products. You do get them in some plant foods, like palm oil, for example, but it's much rarer.
What about coconut or avocado?
Avocado's good. Coconut oil has more saturated fat in it, so it's generally best to avoid, especially if you're aiming for weight loss.
What about something like coconut yogurt, which has a lot of coconut milk in there? Obviously, there's going to be some saturated fat in there, but is that still a healthier option than, say, French fries that have been, just dripping with grease and oil?
I think you're right, Chuck. It's really good in nutrition to think about what you're replacing. So if you're going to have the French fries, then absolutely, the coconut yogurt is a real win.
Okay, good to know, good to know. But yeah, I got to go back to oil. Right? This is something that so much of us, Dr. Newman, struggle with in the kitchen. We know that oil is just loaded with fat and calories, but it just seems to be a kitchen staple. You would be surprised at how many of our friends have all different kinds of oil in their kitchen. And I'm not going to ask you if you have any in your house, but it's just the thing. You're going to cook, you get the bottle of oil, right?
Right, and I have to say that I do have oil in my kitchen and I do use oil in my cooking, but not always. I think sometimes it's nice to have that additional level of flavor or texture, but no oil cooking is a real win for weight loss. And it's something that is so easy when you know how.
And that's the thing. This is an educational program, so we're going to show you how right now as we go into the kitchen to learn how to cook without oil with our culinary correspondent, Anne Christine. She's going to whip up something that has a burst of flavor, but won't burst you out of your pants.
Think you need oil to cook? Nah, you just need skills. And maybe an air fryer. Hey friends, it's Anne from Veggie Magnifique, your go-to for holistic wellness and a healthy vegan lifestyle. And today, we're going to be talking about how to ditch oil in your cooking without losing flavor, crispiness, or your will to live. So let's start with the classic, sautéing. You actually don't need oil to sauté onions, garlic, or veggies. Just use a splash of veggie broth or water. And extra points for, a veggie bouillon because it adds a boost of flavor. So if your pan starts to look a little dry, just add a little splash of water, hydrating your pan. No one likes a parched skillet. Crispy veggies without oil? Yes, please. For those of us who like our potatoes crispy and our broccoli not sad and soggy, the air fryer is your best friend. Roast cauliflower, potatoes, even chickpeas with your favorite spices, no oil needed. Just mix them up, air fry, and voila. Okay, so let's talk about salad dressings that love you back. A lot of people think that you need oil for a good vinaigrette, but no. Tahini is here to save the day, or a delicious maple balsamic mustard vinaigrette. It's creamy, it's tangy, and has zero sketchy ingredients. Unlike store-bought dressings, which are just like oil with a marketing team. And for my toast lovers, skip the vegan butter or butter. Instead, opt for nut butter, hummus, or even jam. Because why not make breakfast a little more delightful and cholesterol-free? So here are my final tips for going oil-free. First off, find a quality non-stick pan. Next up, roast vegetables on parchment paper so they don't stick. And also, if there's something that you just love eating, but you're pretty sure it has oil, why not do an internet search for that recipe, but the recipe without oil? I'm sure you'll find tons of options. See? No magic, no culinary sorcery, just smart swaps for healthier cooking. Your heart, waistline, and even your taste buds will thank you.
And Christine does it again, another banging recipe, and you can find that right now on our website. Coming up on the next episode of One Healthy World, Dr. Newman, we are going to be putting a bow on weight loss.
We certainly are. We're going to be taking a little bit more of a deep dive into carbohydrates, which ones we love and which ones are not so good for us.
There's more to know?
There's more to know, and you're going to find out with us very soon.
I can't wait, so stick with us there. Be sure to like this video and subscribe to us here on YouTube. But until next time, I'm the weight loss champion, Chuck Carroll.
And I'm Dr. Gemma Newman, the plant-powered doctor. We'll see you soon.